Dr. Stanley Coren, our guest, he teaches at UBC, he teaches psychology. And do you teach a class on dogs by any chance,
No,
or is that not allowed?
Actually, last April I taught my last class.
You did? So you're emeritus?
I'm emeritus now, yep. I still teach in an adjunct fashion at the Bergen School of Canine Studies, which is where the Assistance Dog Institute is. So one week a year, I go out over there, and they have this really intensive course in which I teach for 6 days, 8 hours a day to the grad students.
Oh, great.
But I used to teach general psychology,
Yes.
just everything from
I know.
from babies to neuroses and that sort of thing.
And what left-handed people do that right-handed people don't
Exactly right.
that kind of thing.
Yep.
So what about this dog? I think his name was Pollux, who left Montreal and wound up in Kamloops.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there had to be some human help in this thing. I mean, look. You're in the media, so you know the game.
I know the game.
All right? When we get one of these cases where, a dog shows up 600-800 miles away or whatever, this is a major event. If you think about it, there are a whole lot of dogs who go missing who never come back,
right,
and never show up. So it's not as though there's sort of this unerring sense. But in the instances when it happens, it's really quite remarkable. So Lassie Come Home, that wonderful book and everything else which spun out of, was based on a real incident which Eric Knight saw, in which a dog went several hundred miles to return from a new home to his original home, and we do have instances of that. Probably one of the greatest ones is there's one in which a dog crossed the entire continent of Australia to go from Sydney all the way to Melbourne in order to return home, and. So those instances do occur, and in this case, my guess is that somewhere along the line somebody picked up the dog and
gave him a ride.
Well, thought they were going to rescue him and rehome him, and the dog probably wandered outside and followed its nose, and that's where we found him.
Hello, hi honey, I'm home. How long does it take a dog to forget you?
Well, I think that dogs are pretty much like people. I mean, in terms of their ability to remember. One of my all-time favorite stories is a guy who had this wonderful black and tan coonhound, who he named Flannel because her ears were like flannel. And for a year and a half, he had her with her every place. Took her to work and that sort of thing. And then World War II broke out, and he went into the Army, and he was gone for 5 years. He was one of the last people to come back. And when he came back, he was his family lived in Virginia, and so he was coming into Norfolk Naval Base, and then he traveled home. He thought he'd surprise his parents by just sort of popping up at the door. And when he walked into the door, Flannel went woo woo and started to dance around in a circle. And he could hear his mother in the kitchen saying, "Flannel, what are you doing? Steve's not here." And this little woo woo sound was the only her greeting for him. And apparently she had not done it since he left. And the moment he came back, she gave this little woo woo and sort of spun around because she clearly remembered him. And there's a very famous, it's part of the mythology. Of Ulysses, returning home, and he's in disguise, and nobody recognizes him, except for the dog Argus, who he had reared, from a baby.
Shakespearean almost, isn't it? Your dog collection at the moment. Should I call it a collection?
No,
perhaps not.
It's one more dog than my wife would like. I have an old Nova Scotia duck-tailing retriever named Dancer, and a beagle named Darby, and the baby in the house is a little Cavalier King Charles Spaniel named Ripley.
Really?
And
did you consult with the wifey for lifey on that one?
my wife believes that I should have only 2 dogs. She always says you can have as many dogs as you have hands. If you want a 3rd dog, grow a 3rd hand. But I was, the beagle, who's the younger dog in the family, is 8. And I was in bad need of puppy fur in the house. So, I tried to smooth it over. I said to my wife, okay, you get to name the puppy, all right? And I thought this would be a bonding thing.
Sure,
so
I can just hear her saying, gee.
You're right. And so,
Great.
So I told her it had to be an R name because the other 2 dogs start with D, and the most distinctive consonant from D is R. And it had to be 2 syllables, and it couldn't be a human first name. I hate when people use human first names. So she named it Ripley, and I thought, okay, I can live with that. I said, okay, where does it come from? She says, well, it comes from Ripley's Believe It or Not. I said, well, why? And she said, because I can't believe I let my husband get a 3rd dog.
And she'll never forget that, believe me. I know her dear cat has gone to the cat heavens, so perhaps there's a new cat surprising you.
I would really like to get her another cat. The arrangement which we have in the house is that she can have a cat or 2 if she wants.
Sure.
But they have to be the orange cats, the little ginger cats with the M or W on the forehead.
Really?
And the reason is that these guys are genetically different. 95% of them are male.
And they're big usually.
Oh, they're
they?
big. They're
big orange cats.
They're big cats. And although they don't get along all that well with other cats, they get along wonderfully with dogs. And so,
it makes sense.
It because there's always, the cat's always going to be outnumbered.
Well, it's true. Now, man's best friend, will it ever be woman's best friend, do you think, or is that pretty well set in stone?
Well, it was a quotation from a court case, from a summary in a court case back in the early 1800s. When a senator was asking for restitution for a farmer whose pet dog happened to wander off of his property and was shot by somebody else. And he made this impassioned plea that this is not just property, this is a companion, this is a man's best friend. And then it was picked up by Morris Maeterlinck, who was a Nobel Prize winning author who wrote a book called Man's Best Friend, based on that quote. So as a quote, it will never change.
Okay, but the politically correct police may get on it one day.
Right.
I thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Dr. Stanley Coren, Professor Emeritus from UBC.